Hello readers, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about The Young Avengers by Kieron Gillen. Here is the cover. This is actually subtitled The Complete Collection. Basically it just has Kieron Gillen's full run on The Young Avengers. So let's dive into the overview. Originally published in 2020, Young Avengers follows a group of teen heroes within the Marvel Universe as they fight to protect Earth and each other. To go right into the plot and pacing, after a spell goes wrong, a parasite entity known only as Mother attempts to consume the members of the Young Avengers team, particularly Wiccan. To make matters worse, the parasite resembles one member's deceased mother. The Young Avengers have to come together to outsmart and outfight the entity, which can essentially make itself undetectable to adults. In regards to the pacing, I think it's not actually super standard the way that it was written. It definitely has fight scenes and dynamic panels, splash pages, all of those kind of comic tropes, but the story itself seems much more focused on the difficulties of growing into your identity as a young person. And as a result, the comic has more of a medium paced, not quite a super high voltage, action-packed superhero story. Let's talk about the characters. So firstly, Mother, who is a parasite with the ability to corrupt the minds of adults into believing that Mother's actions are within the best interest of the Young Avengers team. Mother resembles Hulkling's deceased mom. Wiccan, who cast the spell to bring Mother into the universe, was trying to do so to appease the grief of his boyfriend, Hulkling. Wiccan is the son of Scarlet Witch and Vision, and he has similar reality warping abilities as his mother. His main struggle in the comic is in finding confidence within himself, his abilities, and his ability to control his powers. Hulkling is the prince and heir to a shape-shifting alien species known as the Skrulls. Kate Bishop, aka Hawkeye, is the most mature member of the group. Kate acts as a sort of leader and is the only powerless human in a group of super-powered teens. Marvel Boy, aka Novar, is a Kree warrior and the love interest of Hawkeye in this story. Kid Loki. As the name implies, this is a version of Loki trapped in a child's body. He does not have complete control over his powers the way that his adult self does. America Chavez is a young woman with the ability to open portals into the multiverse. And last but not least, we have Prodigy, who's a former X-Men student with the ability to absorb knowledge and abilities of anyone he comes into contact with. His powers were lost, but he still has retained all of the knowledge that he gained before their loss, so he's essentially a genius level human and super skilled fighter. Now let's go into some of the themes of Young Avengers. So firstly, we have really complex character arcs. Within a pretty short 15-issue arc, we're able to learn a lot about the characters and all the things that they share and have in common. Firstly, there's a general theme of being an orphan or experiencing losing a parent. We see that most directly here through Hulkling, with his deceased mother literally coming back as an alien parasite to haunt him, hunt his boyfriend, and the rest of their team. But really, all the kids are orphans in a way, and this is shown in a very direct but also symbolic way a little bit later in the issue. There are also some pretty serious mentions of suffering mental illness. We see this predominantly through Wiccan. He is really struggling with his self-confidence. He's struggling with his lack of control over his abilities, and he's really beating himself up over the scenario that he has kind of inadvertently brought about with Mother. This is also happening with Loki in a different way. We see him really struggling with his ideas of guilt and things that he's done in his past life. If you don't know anything about Loki, he's essentially an anti-hero. He's kind of beloved for being a little bit goofy, a little bit silly, not usually super malicious, but he's also not really a good guy most of the time. So in this story, he really is coming to terms with some of the things he's done in his past and working to face his guilt directly. And one pretty major theme that is sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly addressed in this particular comic is the idea of queerness, and more specifically, found family. So we have everything from a coming out story to an open gay relationship to characters talking about their queerness super openly, and even the mention of all the characters on the team being queer in one way or another. In some ways, the Young Avengers mirrors a sad but real depiction of some people's queer experience, with them not having access to their parents or any family, them being alone and having to find young people, young queer people, to make a home and feel comfortable with. There's also this idea of not being believed by adults. This parasitic creature is chasing them and trying to literally consume them, and the kids try to go to adults and go to parents and heroes like Captain America, but instead they're kind of just brushed away and not taken very seriously. And I think in some ways that's also a very real experience for a lot of queer youth as they're trying to navigate themselves, as they're going through this difficult time of transition and growing into an adult. And there's this idea of not really being believed or not being accepted for who you are, and the only people that really believe them in this story are each other. And I don't want to understate how special and kind of rare I think this really is, especially for a comic that is geared for a young audience, geared for young people. I think it's really special to see this kind of representation and fearless self-acceptance that these kids are showing, and the way that it's written as this is who they are. It's not really about questioning or hating yourself. It's not about trying to change who you are. And instead it's almost solely a story about self-acceptance, finding love, and finding that chosen family, which is a really positive, good depiction that I wish we had more of today. Now to go into some of the good and the bad elements of this comic. So number one, I felt that for a comic about a group of teens, it was written and handled with a great deal of maturity, but still appealing for a young audience, for young readers. So what I mean by that is this isn't just a goofy story about happy-go-lucky teens and everything in their lives are perfect. And it's also not just a soap opera where everything is horrible and mistake after mistake is happening. It's written in a way that even though the characters and the plot is so ridiculous, it's also grounded by the themes that it's talking about, by the character choices. And in a lot of ways, the kids feel like teenagers, the way that they're written, the way that their dialogue is, which I think doesn't always happen when you have more mature writers working on these particularly teen-geared comic storylines. The arc is fully completed, which I think is a really good thing. There's some open-endedness in terms of where these characters are going, but the storyline about Mother, about where these characters are, has a definitive beginning, middle, and end, which you don't usually get a lot of in a lot of comic books. The downside of this, though, is that we haven't really gotten to see a lot of these characters in Young Avengers team-up since. Yeah, some of the characters have been in their solo issues or they've been in larger team-up stories. But what Kieron Gillen did with this Young Avengers run is pretty special. And in some ways, some parts of the pop culture of it all seem a little bit dated to me, but it's still fun. It's still a really good read, and I think if this team came back and was able to build on this story and able to have longer runs, I think this could be not only a really big hit, but I think it could really help a lot of young people and get a lot of young people into comics, because this is something that they would really be able to relate to and enjoy. So my final thoughts, I think this is a really fun story. I think young readers would really enjoy this. I think it would be a great first step into comics with characters that you can really fall in love with. Leave me a comment down below, and I'd love to get everyone's thoughts on who in particular they're kind of fond of or want to see more of within this team. I'd also love to know if anyone has any thoughts on who their favorite kind of superhero teen group is. Is it New Mutants? Is it Young Avengers? Is it the Runaways? Or is it a completely different group that I don't know anything about? I always love learning more about these characters, and I think there's something really special about these teen groups specifically. I'm kind of biased. I love Teen Titans and all of those guys. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.